Hello, and welcome to another virtual author event at the Poison Pen Bookstore. I'm John Charles, and we're delighted to have with us one of our favorite new authors, Tori Eldridge, who's here to talk about her latest book in the Lilly Wong series. Before we start our chat, I do have one brief commercial message. We have copies of both of Tori's books. We would love to have you order them from the Poison Pen Bookstore. We will be getting signed book plates to go with the books. So should you be interested, please either go online or give the store a call. We'd be happy to send a copy or copies to you. Now, without further ado, let me welcome Tori. Welcome, Tori.
Hey, John. It's so great to be back. Thank you so much for having me.
We're delighted to have you back. Why don't we start with a simple question? Tell us who Tori Eldridge was before she became an author.
Oh, my.
Take as much time
That
as you
could take a
want.
little while.
That's okay. You have a full, rich backstory.
This is true. So I grew up in Honolulu, and I left when I graduated high school and went to Northwestern for a year as a theater major. And I had my sights set on performing on Broadway. And after a year in Northwestern, I realized that, I thought I had what it took. I wasn't just a big fish in a little pond. So I told my dad, hey, I'm not graduating. Sorry. And I headed off to the Big Apple. And so I did Broadway musicals there. I was in The Little Prince and the Aviator with Michael York and traveled the country with the late, great Anthony Quinn. And I was in the original First National Company of Cats. That's how old I am. Nothing like the movie, I'm just saying. Have not seen that, nor will I. So then I left that company to come out west to try my hand at television and film, and landed a series regular job on the Love Boat as one of the Love Boat mermaids.
Oh.
Don't know if you remember them. Terry Hatcher got her start as a Love Boat mermaid, and so we had a whole year of that, and it was great. Did, a couple other television things, a pilot here, things there. Did a lot of voiceover work, and then I did the motion capture for Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within. And that was really neat because I was part of this groundbreaking technology. So I was doing things like that, and I got married, I got pregnant, and I was teaching singing in my home with the baby crawling around on my feet. And, occasionally I would do acting projects if somebody called me on the phone and said, Tori, we want you to do this, cable series. I'd be like, okay. And so I was doing that, and my husband had become a producer. He was getting into that, and he was getting all these screenplays. So I started reading them, for him, for me, and I got an idea for a screenplay myself, and so I wrote it. And that first screenplay was horrible, absolutely atrocious. But I got wonderful feedback and wrote the screenplay that would then earn a semi-finalist spot in the Nicole Fellowship, with the, from the Academy. So that was really exciting. And everybody who read my screenplays, that and others, said I should be writing novels. So I took their advice, and I did. And it was a wonderful experience. And I started to shop it, and then I stopped myself. And I realized that there was a whole business of writing, and I was not willing to do it at that time. I wanted to focus on raising my kids, and I had just caught the martial arts bug. And that would get me big time, in Tong Soo-do and kickboxing and ground fighting. And then I discovered the ninja arts and Toshindo, and oh my goodness, I stayed with that until a 5th degree black belt and all these. I was traveling the country giving seminars on ninja arts and weapons and women's empowerment. I wrote a book on empowerment. I had a clothing line, I had a online store and all this stuff, and then I kept wanting to write. And I went back to that novel, and I realized, what, now I'm ready to commit. So I orchestrated a huge change to my 50th birthday, and I retired from teaching and training and dedicated my life, basically 24/7, to becoming a novelist. So there you go. And on the way to the Lilly Wong book, I wrote several different novels and had a lot of short stories published. So that's been my circuitous route you.
Lilly started out as a character in a short story. How did she evolve into the protagonist for the novels? What was her journey?
Yeah, so the whole thing started as a flash 200 word. Can you write a thriller in 200 word challenge? And so I wrote this thriller in 200 words and put that away, went back to writing the novel I was doing. And then Reader's Digest sent me an email and said, "Hey, we're having a contest and it's due tomorrow." And so I just stream of consciousness took that premise and started writing a scene, which incidentally would become a pivotal scene in her backstory and in The Ninja Daughter. And out of that came this Chinese, Norwegian, young woman, modern day ninja. And I went, whoa. And as soon as I wrote that story, I knew it was going to be a novel because she was talking to somebody. And I knew exactly who she was talking to and the situation. And I knew that that situation would open the novel.
And that became The Ninja Daughter, which was your first book. Now you're on your second book, The Ninja's Blade. Tell us a little bit about that without spoiling anything for readers. So what's a tease for the book?
Okay. So The Ninja's Blade takes place 4 weeks after The Ninja Daughter. And even though it's, a running series, it can easily be read as a standalone. In fact, I've had a couple of reviewers who just, loved it and said it was the first book they read, and now they immediately went out and bought The Ninja Daughter because, they wanted to read that one. So it's very encouraging to me to know that you can read them in any order. It doesn't matter. But I have a thing about violence in fiction, so here, I train in combat, or I did. And a lot of times in fiction, literary or television, film, there's this, it doesn't affect, the hero as much as I feel perhaps it should. Because I think violence leaves its mark, whether it's done to you, whether it's done by you, whether it's done around. And by the way, it should leave a mark, unless you're, some sociopath. So Lilly went through some very exciting times, especially at the end of The Ninja Daughter, and that has stuck with her, and it is affecting her a lot. And that is how this opens, with, of course, a big action scene, but with her, already that she is in this turmoil. But the Ninja's Blade, at the end of The Ninja Daughter, there was an element of sex trafficking. And I knew I wanted to do a deeper dive into this, especially in the commercial sexual exploitation of youth in Los Angeles, my city. And so The Ninja's Blade began with research. It began researching this topic and watching interviews and reading, reports and discovering amazing organizations like Children of the Night. And out of these things came these characters and their stories and all the different ways that these young people, all of our young people, are in jeopardy and can be lured, coerced, tricked, kidnapped, forced. And they come from all walks of life, and they have all these different stories. And from this research came these characters, and from these characters came this plot. And so that's a very different route for The Ninja's Blade than The Ninja Daughter.
Family and family duty play an important role in Asian culture and in your character's life. Can you tell us a little bit about her family, how that affects her as a character, and in some ways how she really is an atypical agent for change because she's got this family rather than being a loner?
That's very true, because most, she's not quite a vigilante, but vigilante type heroes, right? They're the lone wolf. Their family has either been killed by the person they're hunting, or they're feeling estranged. No, Lilly is 25. She is a young adult trying to find her way as an adult with her parents. Y'all remember how that was, right? That transition from being a kid and your parents to now you're an adult. It's like, what does that look like? What does that relationship look like? And of course, in the backstory, 7 years in Lily's life before the ninja daughter, her younger sister was murdered. And that turmoil is what propelled Lilly to become a protector of women and a big sister to a city. But that element of grief affects and trauma has affected her parents differently. They're all, this underlying thing. So there's all these layers that are going on in an already complex family dynamic. Her mother is an immigrant from Hong Kong, and her father is Norwegian from North Dakota. And they met in college, and they shouldn't have. Her mother had family obligations to her father back in Hong Kong that she did not fulfill. And this unfulfilled filial obligation is placed onto Lilly. And so there's that added dynamic that's going on. So as if her home experience couldn't be more complicated, it has all of these threads. And nobody knows what she does. At least in the beginning of the ninja daughter, nobody knows what she does, right? And so, there's this element of secrecy, and the fact that Lilly has turned her entire life upside down to be pursuing this. So there's the family dynamic is something very special to me. Lilly is atypical. The book itself is atypical because I wanted to bring culture, my cultural experience. I'm Chinese Hawaiian on my mother's side, and my father was Norwegian from North Dakota. So I wanted to share that very unusual, kind of fascinating, intriguing dynamic. So there's that. And usually if you're going to do a deep dive into that, you go to the literary section of your bookstore, or maybe the historical fiction, right? But no. I wanted it in a fast-paced action thriller. And the other thing that I really wanted to delve into was this family dynamic, because that's very important to me. And as you said, it's very important to Asian culture, and I would say most cultures. It's specific. She has a very specific family dynamic, but these themes apply to all families and all mothers and daughters and all mothers and sons and all, they're universal themes, so they're so relatable. But being able to combine these elements in with mystery and thriller and this fast-paced action, I think is unusual. And it's just what I wanted to do.
I think one of your other goals was to try to write a book that realistically represented the ninja arts. So can you, for those of us who may not know what the ninja arts are, can you give us a little bit of background, kind of talk about how you wanted to show the real side to that?
Thanks for that question. Yes, that was a huge goal, was to bust through the sensationalized stereotype of the ninja. It's loads of fun, right? I love those movies and those stories and books, and I ate them up. I devoured them. They were great fun. I had no idea at that time I was going to become one. I had no idea at that time that there was such a thing. I didn't know that there was an actual martial art for the ninja. I didn't know that there were lineages passed down to one grandmaster and then passed on to others, and that there were thousands of us around the world, probably right in your neighborhood, which makes your neighborhood very safe, because I know lots of ninja and not one of them is an assassin. I'm just saying. I just want to make that clear. The ninja that I know are out there training with dedication to make the world a safer, more empowering place. And that's what I wanted to show. And I want to show what that looks like in a modern day situation. I've had people say, why doesn't she carry around a katana? I'm like, because she's a modern day ninja in Los Angeles and she can't go walking around places with, a sword strapped to her back. Actually, this is Lily's knife. Yeah, it's very modern, right? Very modern, very Western. A Fox 599 Emerson Wave Karambit. It's a fabulous blade. And you know what else? It's legal because the talon blade on it is under 3 inches. So it makes it a perfect modern day weapon. So there are things like that I'm really trying to show what this looks like in a modern situation, the esoteric qualities of it, the Buddhist, Tendai Buddhist ties to it that are very important to her, that are very important to me. A lot of this is coming from, my own experience as a ninja and my friends. And so everything that Lilly does, authenticity is very important to me. Everything that she does are techniques that I have either taught or I've done or I've, witnessed my friends doing or I've researched. And so, authenticity is important, and that's a huge thing all across through these books.
Let's talk a little bit about setting. Los Angeles is the setting for your books. It, in a way, kind of reflects Lilly herself and its diversity. Mm-hmm. And actually, in your new book, The Ninja's Blade, that's an actual location, I believe, in Los Angeles. So talk about the city, how it impacts you as a writer, and how it plays a role in your new book.
Yeah, you're very right. I look at Los Angeles as a macrocosm of Lilly, or vice versa. You could say Lilly is a microcosm of Los Angeles, right? She is a woman pulled in three cultural directions: her Japanese sensei, this Midwest sensibility, and this Asian sensibility. And of course, Los Angeles is one of the most diverse cities in the world. And so that's a very important thing. It's a very important theme for me. Also, I've lived here for over 35 years, and there are a lot of communities and places in Los Angeles that don't always get the limelight. And those places interest me. And when I was researching The Ninja's Blade, like I said, this whole story came out of that research. I was open to it being whatever it was going to be, and the characters being whoever they were going to be. And they emerged from these stories and these interviews and things. And so I placed it in Long Beach Boulevard, which can be called the Blade. The Blade is kind of like a way of saying the tracks or the blade. So the Ninja's Blade has numerous meanings, just in the title. But Lilly is hunting for this missing teenage girl from a rather ritzy, white prep school, who was in the life and was rescued and now has been abducted, and she's trying to find her. So she's the MacGuffin, right? We're trying to find Emma, gotta save Emma, and on the way to saving Emma, she meets Dala and Sherelle and Ana Lucia and all of these young girls and the men that are trafficking them in very different types of ways and characters. And I love these characters. They touch my heart. They make me laugh. They've made me cry. And I wanted their stories. I wanted the reader and me to explore this world through their individual eyes. And so those are the people that, Lilly meets. And so her quest becomes much bigger than searching for one girl. And, to complicate matters, all of this is happening while Gong Gong and Popo, her meddlesome grandparents, are coming in from Hong Kong for her mother's 50th birthday and this big birthday bash. And, that's going to cause a lot of trouble.
Surprisingly, at least to me, food plays a really important role in your books, not only because of Lilly's father, but just the whole dynamics. Talk about how you use food as a prism into your characters' lives.
It's so true. Everybody who's read, any of the Lilly Wong books, they always come away with two things that they absolutely know. Lilly loves to eat, and she burns off calories. So her father, this North Dakota Norwegian, owns an authentic Hong Kong cuisine Chinese restaurant. Yeah, so you're going to have to read the first book to figure that one out. Well, you can read the second book. It's interesting. Again, it's unusual. It's an interesting dynamic. It's part of his purpose to anchor her in her mother's culture and to make up for this thing that shouldn't have happened. And, all these things. And so that's a very important thing. So food coming from him represents so many things: love, obligation, sacrifice, all these things. You might wonder why Lily's last name is Wong when her father is Norwegian. That's something else, right? So something else to wonder about. But here's the thing about food. If you want to really understand a culture, so much of what we express is in food. Go to Hawaii. You'll learn about my culture. Just eat. Just eat. And if you want to understand it fully, try and fix it, cook it. You know, if you go to my website, torieldridge.com, I have a book club page, and in there I have recipes, and I have book club kits, and in the book club kits are recipes. So give it a try. And so food is hugely important to me as a person. I love to eat, I love to cook, but as a cultural expression and a way to, you know, really make that connection.
How has your experience as a screenwriter influenced you as a novelist, and do you often apply your rule of three when you're writing novels?
I structure my novels as I used to structure screenplays. Absolutely. I mean, that's how I learned to write, right? That was how I learned to do structure. And by the way, screenplays are one of the most structured forms of literary expression that I've encountered. So I was used to that. And I'm a person who enjoys structure. You know, I was a professional dancer. You can't get more structured than that, right? You know, and then martial arts and singing, you know, there's all these skills and structure. And so I enjoy that. I find freedom in really mastering structure. So when I set up to write a novel, usually the Ninja Daughter was completely different because it just came out of the spur of the moment. But generally speaking, I start with research. From research comes characters, a premise, an idea that expands into maybe a paragraph that expands into, you know, kind of a holistic view. And then I open up Scrivener. I love Scrivener because it has these binders that are like 3x5 cards. And when I was writing screenplays, I used to work on Final Draft. And they also have this kind of, you know, 3x5 card kind of thing. And so I begin with a 4-act structure, with acts 2 and 3 being the middle, which is generally twice the size of the beginning or the end. And what that does for me is it breaks my story into 4 sections that each have a beginning, a middle turning point, and a climax of their own. And by breaking that big middle section into 2 acts, Act 2 and Act 3, that gives me twice as many. And that helps to keep the pacing going. It helps to keep that action driving pace that keeps going. And so what I'll do is I'll populate in my binder, I'll populate the acts with, you know, the approximate chapters that I believe is going to go in there because I have a feel for how I do these novels. And I'll put in the notes, you know, the highlights of what's going in there, the purpose of it, what's happening in that. And when I have all of that kind of laid out, that's when I start to write. Now, I know there are a lot of authors who feel like if they do all that, then they start to write and they get bored with it because they feel like, well, I've already done it, right? But for me, it's quite different. Every stage for me is incredibly creative in a completely different way. And so by the time I'm actually sitting down to writing, there's that discovery that comes from the words emerging and leading to something else, and characters start saying things I didn't expect them to say and going in directions I didn't expect them to go. And I frequently end up adding more chapters or taking out chapters or redirecting things or learning new things. Sometimes I've even discovered a character I hadn't planned on that was huge, that happened in another book that I write. So in doing this, it keeps the pace going, it keeps the action happening. It also allows me to balance between all the subplots and to make sure that I haven't had too much time away from the family or too much time away from the love interest, because believe it or not, in the midst of this gritty story, and it can be dark, the Ninja's Blade. It's dark and it's gritty and it deals with some really tough things. But it also has a lot of humor and a lot of fun and family. And there's a love interest. Daniel Kwok is back. That's all I'm going to say about that.
There's been a lot of talk over the last decade about literary brands. How would you describe your literary brand to a reader if you could only choose 3 words?
My literary grand?
No, brand. Brand with a B.
Oh, brand. I was going to say, what's a literary brand? This is new and exciting to me. Literary brand. You know, my literary brand is the same as me as a person, and it starts with empowerment. That's what I was doing before I switched to this. That's what I was doing with martial arts. That's what I try and do with people. I try and uplift people. I try to give people an empowering perspective, a way to look at things that motivates them and expands their awareness and their way of looking at things. And so as dark and gritty as some of these things that I write are, to me, I'm writing an empowering story about an empowering character. So that would be my brand right there.
Many people, especially now, are turning to reading as a way of escaping from what's going on. Have you been reading things recently that you'd like to share with others?
Oh my goodness. I'm one of these writers who reads constantly. I always have one book I'm listening to on audiobook and one that I'm reading. So right now I'm reading L.C. Shaw's new thriller. So that's, let's see, The Silent Conspiracy. I just finished listening on audiobook to Silvia Moreno Garcia's Mexican Gothic.
Oh, yeah.
That was incredible, incredible. So those are the 2 most recent that I've been reading. I read recently, I got an advanced reader copy for Rachel Housel Hall, and Now She's Gone, and that was stunning, you know, and Tracy Clark's, oh gosh, what You Don't See. I've got on my audio, I'm very excited to read Winter Counts.
Yeah, that's been very popular.
Yeah, that's going to be really exciting, by David. We've been blanking, sorry.
That's all right.
But easy title to look up. So, you know, a lot of things. Oh, and I just got an ARC for Jonathan Mayberry's Ink.
Oh.
I love his books.
Yes.
They're going to be fabulous. So.
How are you keeping yourself emotionally sound and fit for writing during these difficult times?
The same way that I did before.
Okay.
I start my day, I open my eyes, I sit up and prop up pillows behind my back, and I meditate. That's how I begin every single day. I've been meditating since I was 12 in different ways and at different times. And in later years, I have found that the one way that will guarantee that I do not skip is if I meditate before my feet hit the floor. So that's what I do. And when I do that, I have certain salutations and affirmations and things that I do that are part of my practice. But then I let my mind wander and I check in with where it's going, so that I can see what's happening with me. And then I focus on my breath and I set my intention for the day. And I find that setting my intention for the day is very, very helpful. And it could be simple, it could be just one thing, it could be 3 things, it could be very specific. But it's important to know what it is I want out of that day. And so I did that before the pandemic, I do it after. And I've been very fortunate in that my daily life has not changed, because I have been kind of a self-isolating kind of person. Really, as outgoing as I am, I can be quite a bit of a hermit. And so my regular day is to come down to the kitchen, put stuff away, and take care of some email and start writing. And I write for the majority of the day, and it's slow going for me, because by the time I get to the words on page situation, every word counts. And the cadence sound, the music of the language counts. And so I'm not very fast. And so it takes, a lot of time. And then I'll break at some point to do the business end, making graphics, connecting with bookstores like you, promotional work, supporting other authors, this, that, the other thing. And then I do some kind of exercise at the end of the day. It could be online yoga, it could be, weights, it could be exercising, hiking in the mountains. I love to do that. A lot of this I'll do while listening to audiobooks because I don't have time to just stop what I'm doing and enjoy, but I have to keep that creativity, other people's creativity, coming in so that it inspires me, so that it challenges me, and so that I can keep up with what my community is doing and I can support them. And so that's very important to me. So I'll listen to audiobooks while I'm cooking dinner, while I'm exercising, while I'm brushing my teeth, while I'm cleaning the house. And I'll read books while I'm stretching, while I'm doing sit-ups, while I'm doing squats. It's really interesting watching me in my house, but it's not all that different before than now.
I think we do have some questions from some of your fans, so we're going to go ahead and take a few of those.
All right. Hey, Tori, can you hear me okay?
I can.
All
How
right.
fun.
Awesome. Okay, I have an interesting question here from a viewer named Lynn, and she asks, do you have an overall story arc planned for future books, or do you kind of take it a book at a time?
Great question. I do not have an overreaching arc. For me, Lilly Wong is an open-ended series. I'll keep writing it as long as I'm inspired to write it and as long as people want to read it. I made her 25. Well, she arrived in my brain at 25, but this is a very important age to me, mid-20s. It's a time where we do so much changing. That the difference between 25 and 26 is so much greater than 56 and 57. Trust me on this. Both are in the rear view, and I can guarantee you there's a lot more things that happen at that age. And so there's so much that can happen with her. I didn't know what was going to happen with the Ninja's Blade until I had finished the Ninja Daughter. I gave myself a head start. Remember, I said I don't write very fast. So I knew that, and I knew that if the Ninja Daughter was picked up, that there was a chance that it would be a 2-book deal, and that there was a chance that I would be expected to miraculously write at a fast pace. So I gave myself a head start, and I outlined the entire book. That's when I did the research. That's when I came up with the story. That's when I outlined it chapter by chapter, summaries, and wrote the first 7 chapters. And then I put it away, and I started a 5th novel. I've written, had 5 different novels going on, right? And so I started this dystopian thriller, and that's when I learned about the Ninja Daughter. And sure enough, wouldn't you know, they wanted the first draft of the 2nd book in a year. And I was like, boy, I'm glad I thought ahead on that, because I had so much of it there. Even that said, I went back to the research because the research was so important to me. I had to really do additional and saturated, and I was able to just jump into it. Now, when I was writing the 2nd book, I knew where she was going to go for the 3rd. And I had a pretty good idea of where she was going to go for the 4th. So I can tell you now that I'm 44,000 words into writing Lilly Wong Book 3. And I think I can tell you she's in Hong Kong.
All right, cool. Let's see, Lynn has another good question, which is, since you've previously done voiceover work, was it an option for you to do your own audiobook?
Oh, what a fabulous question. I have to say it crossed my mind. It did cross my mind because I've done a lot of voiceovers. I love doing readings, really enjoy it. And I read things aloud and act them out while I'm writing. I told you, it's really amusing, if you were a fly on my wall in my house, it'd be really amusing. You should see me doing fight scenes. Yeah, but seriously, I am fighting myself, except in the times when I go in my husband's office and say, "Can I borrow your neck?" But that's a whole other story. So yeah, voiceovers. I was very fortunate in that Blackstone Audio bought the rights. I don't know how you say that. Bought the rights, whatever, for both of the books. And of course, they're a very big audio publishing company, and they have all their, their narrators, right? And nobody asked me, and I thought about putting myself forward as a possible. I didn't think about it very long, because what I realized is a couple of things. Regardless of how much experience I have, it is not experience in audiobooks. And there's a whole other set of skills and things that you need to know and be practiced at to be a truly great narrator. And I believe that I could become one, and I believe it would also take a tremendous amount of my time to learn all those things. And I didn't have the time to spare, because as I mentioned before about the slow writing, I really needed to put my time into writing. So I didn't even whisper a thought about that. And I got this amazing narrator, Natalie Naldas. She's narrated over 100 books. She has the most fabulous voice. You could just listen to her for weeks on end, which is wonderful. And so, yeah, that's what I did.
Let's see here. Can you speak a little bit more about your own martial arts training, and how you got started, and what ninja training specifically entails? I know it's probably covered in the books, but can you just open the door a little bit on that?
Sure. I always wanted to try martial arts, even when I was a kid, but I discovered dance early on. And it was all or nothing. My mother was very much like, I would get calls from PE instructors. Does Tori want to join the diving team? Does Tori want to join the soccer team? My mother was like, sure, but you have to choose one or the other. So maybe that made a bigger impact on me than I thought, because I'm very immersive. I'm very kind of all or nothing, which is why I retired from martial arts in order to commit to writing. I'm all in whatever it is I'm doing. So I was, my son, I put him in Tong Soo-do, and I was one of those moms sitting on a bench watching him do his stuff. And I thought, I could do that. I want to do that. By that time I had retired from dance. And so I signed up, and the teacher had an idea about me. And so he said, "You know the first form, don't you?" And I went, "Mm-hmm." And he said, "Would you mind performing that solo?" And I went, "Sure." And he goes, "You know the second form, don't you?" And I went, "Mm-hmm." And he goes, "Would you mind performing that?" Well, the whole class went like this for me. By the end of the class, I had done every jump, spinning, kick, thing, forms, passes across the mat. I had sparred. I had been hit in the head, and all these things happened on my first day. And I was hooked. Oh my gosh. To me, it was like, yeah, bring it on. So I started in Tong Soo-do. I was teaching in that. My teachers were very into ground fighting and kickboxing and boxing, and so that was my background. It's also in the Lilly Wong books. There's a scene in the Ninja's Blade that takes place in a boxing ring, which is kind of interesting. So then I discovered, while I was teaching in Tong Soo-do, I discovered Toshindo, which is the modern evolution of the ancient art of the ninja, founded by Stephen K. Hayes and Rumiko Hayes. And Stephen K. Hayes went to Japan back in, I think it was the 70s. And this was when there was just, maybe a dozen people training with Hatsumi Sensei, who was the Grand Master, who had inherited all 9 lineages into, as one. And so Stephen K. Hayes became, one of the training people in there, and he stuck around. And as the story goes, Hatsumi Sensei said, "Go west, spread the news," and he spread the news very well. And now there are people, teachers everywhere, training with the Bujinkan and training with Toshindo and training with individual lineages and all over the place, all over the world. Now, the art, the ninja art, is the most comprehensive martial art that I've ever encountered. It's everything, every weapon that you can imagine. It's stand-up fighting, it's on the ground fighting, it's in the air fighting. Hard to explain, but it's very true. We have a particular way of moving that is unlike any other martial art that I encountered. It's not that kind of sport thing. It's very natural and gravity oriented, and there's something very mystifying by it. So the thing about the ninja arts is the longer you train and the better you get, the more impact and effect you cause with less effort, and what you're doing is even harder to detect. So if you're really, really locked in and doing it right, the people don't even know something has happened. Sometimes the person you're doing it to doesn't even know something has happened. And the effort that you're putting out, if the level is very high, is at ease, and you're manifesting all these things. So that's why it appears so magical. And that's what captivates me about the art. It's actually a very, very difficult art to teach and to learn. And so if you're really going to get a handle on it, you have to commit, not just to one black belt, but to many, because that's just, only breaking the surface. And by the way, all of that, I try and portray through these books, all those different things, and that's part of the joy for me. Oh, and wushu. I forgot to mention wushu. My son went to UCLA and was part of the UCLA wushu team. Wushu is a Chinese martial art. Wushu is kind of a generic word like kung fu is, but in America, wushu is a competition-based art. And think Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, right? It's beautiful. Well, at the time that my son was in college, I was already a fifth degree black belt, and my favorite weapon of choice was the 6-foot staff and the spear. And wushu does wonderful things with a spear and a staff. And so I took a workshop with my son's Sifu, his teacher, and then I expressed an interest in studying specifically wushu techniques for spear and bow. And this is a very unusual request because most Sifus will not teach you that. You have to start at the beginning. But he really honored, a fellow practitioner and taught me that. And so I was able to incorporate that into my way of using spear and bow. And so when it came time for Lilly, it seemed very logical to me that she would start in wushu, which is a Chinese art that she could do in public in full view of her community since she was a little kid, and that she would discover a ninja teacher when she was 12 in the park, tossing training partners like confetti, and think, ooh, I have to learn that. So that she trained in secret.
Can't believe we're almost
Barbara,
out.
hi.
Tori. I snuck up behind John. It's really been fascinating. Thank you for joining us. And John, I'm sure, has done a wonderful job. It's great to see you. And we're going to need to say au revoir.
Thank you so much for popping in. I really appreciate all the support you guys have given to me. So thank you so much, Barbara and John. This has just been wonderful, and I hope people will shop Poison Pen. They ship all around the world, just saying. And signed book plates, and I stamp them with my personal ninja chop.
Thank you again, Tori. You're always a delight to have, and we wish you much success with your new book.